Let's dive into the weekend damage report. We're going to be covering this and a lot of not only crypto, but we also will be charting as well today. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is BTCC. If you are trading out there, this is the place to go. Could jump over to btcc.com. Use our link. You get a 10% first-time bonus in your deposit, so check that out. There's also some other benefits there in terms of enjoying lower fees on your trading. You can do copy trading over here, spot, all sorts of things over there. So check it out, btcc.com. I want to lead off, and we're going to have Evan on here in a second. We're going to get into the macro side of things first, and then we will chart a handful of tokens, including Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and some others that you guys want to stick around for because there's some very interesting moves right now. I want to play a clip for you guys to lead this off. Here's Cramer talking about the weekend war digestion. Take a look.
Monday, I expect we're going to be digesting this weekend's war damage in Iran and everywhere else, especially our allies in the Gulf. We keep expecting that there'll be a moment when the Iranians have no more missiles and no more drones. The president keeps talking about the Iranian Navy and aircraft being decimated, but it's the endless drone and missile attacks that are the problem. They don't need a Navy or an Air Force to shut down the strait. Frankly, sometimes it seems like that Iran seems as strong as it was when the war started. Even if you cut off the head of the snake, it seems to mean nothing. That's why this weekend could be so important. Maybe we get a one-way war if the president unleashes the firepower he said he would last night, and in this aftermath, the U.S. can dictate the terms. We definitely aren't there yet that I know. Maybe we make very little progress. Let's see what happens this weekend.
This has been a kind of just an absolute kind of just toss-up around everything that has been war-related. First, it was playing against the trade. Then it was playing pro the trade. And now I think the erratic nature of what we're seeing out of the White House has been just a continuous pause on almost anybody in the market. If you look at the jobs right now, we're also getting very erratic numbers coming in on jobs. February now has been revised down from an initially reported 92K and to a total loss now of 133. So another biggest U.S. job loss since December of 2020. Jobs continue to be a challenge, even though we've been seeing slight narratives coming out. But again, you're talking about data that's coming out of the White House and out of the administration. You just don't know what you can trust. Other things that are happening right now is a new budget is now looming. And this blew me away when I saw the 1.5 trillion just for military spending. This is an expansion, I believe, from what the original budget was. And of course, the new ask of another 200 bill. So apparently they're asking for another 300 billion, just getting up to the 1.5 trillion. If this is on top of all that, then this would be absolutely unsustainable in general. A lot of cuts that would have to take place in a lot of programs that I think Americans would be very, very against. So these are the kind of macro environments that are hitting. The other thing that's a macro environment that hits, and I think this is where the line in the sand is for MAGA. At least most of the MAGA people I've heard and talk on Twitter about is that energy and gas is it. This is kind of the last point of no return. If you look at Brent crude, even under Biden, in comparison, West Texas, regular gas was 313. We're setting at 409 now. And it does not look like it's slowing down right now. So it's very possible that this could all be leaning up. I want to bring in Evan Aldo to kind of jump into some of this because this is going to get into a lot of things around energy. How are you, Evan?
I'm living the dream, doing fantastic, Paul.
Well, listen. Okay, so a couple of things right now. When you look at the S&P and you look at the amount of trace down that we have seen on general stocks, including the tech stocks, and then you look at movement within the energy market, where are you playing any in any of the S&P 500 right now, whether it's energy, defense, or any of the tech stuff?
I've been shaving off profits off of my XLE. I don't really trade oil itself, but XLE profits, I took about half, cashed out about half of that, actually converted some over to Bitcoin. So there's definitely some things to look at there, some transitory, kind of things. And I think that you're at a point where you're getting towards the end of this. I mean, I think 1 month, 2 months, I think there's a little bit more negotiation tactics Trump wants to try. He wants to see, if we can get some better terms. But we do know probably within a month to 2 months, Trump is going to fold and this is going to be all over. It's just so unpopular with the public. I just don't see, and then that military spending, I just don't see how it's sustainable. So
Well, the unpopularity of it, do you think that if you look at whether it's energy or you look at even some of the commodities that are starting to play in the market right now, is there anything that you would be picking in those areas right now to possibly go into? Gold, for instance, silver, anything in the metal side?
I mean, I sold my gold about 3 weeks ago now, something like that, 2 or 3 weeks ago, converted over to Bitcoin. I think we looked at that chart, on one of your shows a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
as well. So I think the trade, I mean, I think it's lighter commodities and it's more towards Bitcoin because Bitcoin's down, it went down, I think 70% against
Yeah.
gold. It went down a lot against XLE as well. So I think it's a pretty good evaluation on Bitcoin. I mean, unless you're somebody who thinks Bitcoin's going to go down to like 30K or, really low numbers, I think Bitcoin is probably the obvious choice for the long term right now. So, yeah.
Let's take a look. Okay, well, first, before we jump into because we're going to chart Bitcoin here in a second, but I want to get your opinion on Clarity because obviously that's kind of the only thing that is kind of hinging on the crypto market right now is Clarity. If Clarity goes through, and now we're hearing, some rumbles that there might be a deal in works, but again, I don't know what to believe out of DC anymore. These guys are up, they're down, they're in, they're out. I mean, it has been just an absolute cluster in terms of the amount of negotiations that either are or not taking place, are or are not taking place. That's the question. But let's just frame it in two ways. Clarity gets through, or at least we get to a point where it could go to the Senate for a vote. Where do you think the market will head? Is this a bullish position, or do you feel like it's going to be kind of a short, run and then a pullback? Any kind of analysis there?
It's at least a crabbish position, I'll say that. It would up the odds of the bottom being in, which I think there's a decent shot that the bottom
Yeah.
is in already. So I think it would be very bullish for the long term. I don't think it would immediately, send Bitcoin up to 100K or anything like that. I don't follow it, religiously, but I think, you got a decent shot maybe end of summer or something like that. And that would work really well for the midterms for Republicans. Like if you're Republicans, you want to try to pass that towards the summer and have a rally into midterms. I think right now is actually a little bit strategically a little bit early to try to pass it. I think you want to wait a few months and then pass it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, another thing, I think people are looking at midterms in terms of energy price right now, because here we are on crude oil on track for highest since June of 22, hitting 111 a barrel. This could potentially hit 115, maybe even 120. If this comes in, again, this is going to impact fuel prices here in the U.S. Specifically. If we see a $6 or a $7 gallon of gas in the summer, I feel like this is almost a no-win for the Republicans in terms of the midterms. And we had Deaton on early this week. I mean, the Senate is kind of hinging right now. That's the only one that they have a chance at winning. Does this change the market outlook if we see energy price continuing to climb? Let's say there's $7 a gallon gas. What happens to crypto?
You're probably in trouble, man. Yeah, because oil is going to keep going up. The energy sector is going to keep going up. You're probably in trouble. Bitcoin's probably going to keep going down. Your S&P 500 is probably going to keep going down in those situations. That's if this extends on for more than a month to 2 months, into summer. I don't think I would take the more optimistic route that the public doesn't want that to happen. Trump doesn't want that to happen. I don't think that, I just don't really see that happening as of right now. I think 1 more month, 2 more months, and we're going to get this done. We're going to get energy prices down, and we're going to see a much milder version of 2022 in terms of the S&P 500 correction, in terms of Bitcoin's correction as well. I think what everyone hoped 2022 was going to be is what 2026 will end up being. That's my optimistic route.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Let's see. I want to jump over to the Bitcoin chart real quick before I play a clip, because I want to get into the economy side of things. But Bitcoin as it sets right now, because this is kind of this sideways position that we've somewhat gone into. And really, I think the big question, I think you put out a tweet, if I can find it right here, 65.9, 65.9, 65.9 must hold this position. Why are you claiming so much here?
I think it's a very important point. I don't think it's the end of the world if you lose that. You're probably going to retest the low 60s, at least 62K. And if we look at the chart here, I mean, the first thing, let's talk about the positive right now. So the first thing we want to look at is the 2-week. You got a deep anchor wave right here, very similar to June of 2022. Keep in mind, Bitcoin normally bottoms earlier every single cycle.
Yeah.
If you don't count FTX, this was a long consolidation period, very crabbish. You came back down, made a higher low. Then you had your black swan for FTX, which ETH got lucky. ETH actually didn't make a lower low during this area. So I think that there's a case to be made that we stay crabbish, that we can kind of hold, hold potentially these areas, the low 62, 63, these areas, or, 61, those areas, and that's your potential bottom. Now, what I was saying in that tweet is for more of the short term, this is more of a day trader, swing trader perspective, is that if this area right here holds like it did over here, there's probably a lot of stop losses, a lot of stuff right below this, maybe in the low 65s. And once that gets hit, you're probably easily going down to 63 or down farther. But what I like for the more short term perspective here is I like my 4-hour trigger wave right here. Money flow is coming up. It is the weekend, so it can get a little wonky, but I like my 5-hour as well. So until these things break kind of this area, breaking the 65.9, like I mentioned, I would remain a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more bullish. And I think that, this is, last thing I'll say here is that if I think that this is like a double bottom right here, and if you can break right above, 68.7, here's your technical target at 72. There's also a ton of liquidity at 72 that I think may get hit. So yeah.
I don't see that right now as in the cards. There's just so much macro headwinds that push against Bitcoin, unless we get something that is very unusual and we look for, a flight to potential safety. But even then, I think gold would probably benefit the most from that. If you look at the previous time that we've seen Bitcoin make a run, most of that was a derivative of the ETF launch. So we got buildups going in, Bitcoin's going to launch an ETF. Sure enough, we get the launch. It was a little bit delayed, but then boom, Bitcoin makes its all-time high. Michael Saylor, though, now is pushing for Treasury to be part of maybe the next wave of strategy that could hit around Bitcoin going into its next phase, and that is if some of these major Fortune 500s, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft example here, saying big tech, and maybe other big companies that could actually enter putting Bitcoin and digital assets on their treasury. If that occurs, is that enough, do you feel, that maybe that's where we see the bottom of Bitcoin and then we could see that outpacing macro?
Yeah, that's a big thing. A lot of catalysts, that, like the Clarity Act, those things are very governmental stuff, and good news like these things when the market's down a lot are usually very bullish. When you see stuff like this when the market's at an all-time high, it's usually pretty bearish. So you want to look for good news when the market's down, and that's normally, a big thing to look at there, essentially. So yeah, I think it's generally bullish. I do think that, like, if I had to guess when you'd actually see like a sustained run more than, just a jump up to 72K or 75K or whatever, I'm talking 80K, 90K, 100K, potentially Q4. I would say October, November, December, maybe just maybe September, but closer to Q4.
Evan, if you pull up the Bitcoin ETH chart and you go on the weekly, spread that out and look at the performance of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, because you look at the cycles, and last cycle, ETH just not moving to anywhere where we saw, at least in terms of the levels of Bitcoin. Is this a better play right now if you kind of compare some of the pullbacks that we've seen on Ethereum? Are we in a better position now with Ethereum versus Bitcoin?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I think it's the obvious choice right now. You just got to know, like, you got to be careful. You got to know when to, like, kind of invalidate, your theory there. And it's very easy right now. I mean, your 2-week money flow is coming up, trigger wave right there. Very similar to last time they ended QT back in, 2019. You saw this area, and then you outperformed Bitcoin for years. So that's, really good right here. And I think this giant rally in 2025 shows us that Ethereum still wants to perform and wants to be a big player. So until that's nullified, I would remain very optimistic on Ethereum. I would get more nervous and probably convert ETH over to Bitcoin if you lose this area right here, but I don't think you're going to. It's been very strong here. I think monetary policy would support this. I like ETH right now. I think ETH is a very good play, but again, you always need a invalidation point, which is going to be below this low that we made in February. I think if you can't hold that, you're just not in a bullish structure anymore.
Speaking of Ethereum, further into that ecosystem, Uniswap. If we take a look at Uniswap right now, because this one has been trending down for quite some time, what is your position with Uniswap? Would you make a play on this or continue to watch it?
I think it's a continue to watch. It's a sketchy chart. I don't really like how you lost, this low from June of 2022. I mean, technically, you've been in a bear market since 2021. And the problem with that is, like, how long are we going to wait? We waited 5 years now. I mean, it's not really, I just need more momentum. I need more, momentum, more change in direction. I mean, this one looks like it's going back down to the previous lows right here. It could be a low risk, high reward play, especially if you're looking at it against Bitcoin, because that's the main goal, just outperform Bitcoin here. So what you can do on this potentially is set a stop loss or set a notification kind of below these lows here. I mean, that was technically your low, your October 25 low against Bitcoin, which that's better than a lot of altcoins. So if it loses kind of this area right here, I would get out quickly, which is only, you could hit that within a few days theoretically. It's only 7% down. Overall, Uniswap, it's sketchy. I mean, I don't really, for lack of a better term, it just looks weird because you're losing this area. You're not even really hitting anything from long term. You're almost to price discovery mode to the negative back from, November 2020 numbers. So, yeah, I don't know about this. Not my favorite coin.
What about Uniswap versus ETH in the same? Would you kind of be the same case?
This is very similar, yeah. Uniswap versus ETH. I mean, I would much rather bet on ETH than this. Right here, I mean, this chart, it's just so down so much against ETH. I mean, it has not had a bull market against ETH in a long time. You had that low there essentially. So what you can do is, set a notification for I'd say these lows right here from February. If you lose these lows, then get out. I mean, there's some potential. There's definitely some potential for running up. You just got to be very careful. You got to know like when to invalidate it. So yeah.
Let's jump over to Solana, drift to exploit. Of course, the fallout now spreading to 20 other projects on Solana. That was something that has been a concern of the community. But if you look at Solana in general, do you think this, because this is still, I look at it maybe as my number 2 token, maybe number 3, depending on, in terms of opportunity in a bull market. Is that where you would play this, or would you be a little bit more, conservative on Solana?
Right now, I think Solana looks a little weak against Ethereum, but that doesn't mean that it didn't bottom. Solana on its USD pair, I kind of like. I think this potentially could have been a bottom on February 5th. I mean, now you're getting a nice bounce off of this major area, right? $77. So that's kind of like your 65.9 on Bitcoin. As long as you hold that, there's definitely a lot of potential here. And if you can break above and hold where we are right now, not looking too good at the moment, kind of rejecting from the 80, but there's definitely a lot of potential here. I think eventually, and this could be, by eventually, I mean like 6 months, it could be something like this. Eventually, you will break up to $100, probably in quarter 4, quarter 1 of next year. When you look at Solana versus ETH, I don't like this because look, it just keeps going. It's breaking downward versus ETH. I mean, this is your, I think you're probably going to at least bleed. I mean, very likely to bleed another,
Evan, you seem like you're an ETH bull on this one. Almost every chart.
I'm just objective. It's just it's just bleeding against ETH. It's just making new lows against ETH right here. So I mean,
well, and many people still think maybe this is the cycle for Ethereum because there was so much building happening from the ETH ecosystem. It's showing up at ETCC right now, and maybe this is the cycle that we actually get that. Some, of course, would be institutional adoption. We're starting to see TradFi moving into the space. All of that could be good news for Ethereum in general. I want to look at, speaking of that, I want to look at BMNR. So this is another one. From a standpoint of BMNR, and you look at where Tom Lee is right now, and he's continuing to buy ETH. Obviously, our trigger for us is when he buys 100,000 ETH. We think that is where he thinks, at that point, they believe it's at the bottom. And there's been many different acquisition points that have been close, but not, no cigar. But if you look at BMNR right now, how would you play into this? Would this be a hedge for you?
I love this because it's such a low risk, high reward play. Essentially, here's the low you made February 5th. And there's a few different things we could look at here, but one play is just like,
Yeah.
it's so volatile. I can't even get my stop loss tool to work. But essentially, if you lose this area, I would say if you lose like $16, that's where it gets a
Okay.
lot scarier. I do
Yeah.
think that in all likelihood, if ETH has bottomed out, this should have bottomed out. Obviously, trying to make a higher low here. I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation. Like my guess is you're going to be choppy for some months potentially, and then hopefully break upward. And hopefully this can do what MicroStrategy did back in 2022, essentially. What you got to look at though is BMNR versus Ethereum. You're still okay now. You made a slightly lower low against ETH. Actually, I think it was yesterday. This area right here. So that's what I want to keep my eye on. As long as you can hold that, I would remain bullish because obviously, if it can't outperform Ethereum, the thing it's just buying like crazy, then what's the point? Obviously, you're better off to buy ETH. But as long as you can hold kind of that area, I would remain more optimistic. This also on its Bitcoin pair, because we're trying to outperform Bitcoin too, obviously, it's still holding this pretty well on February 5th. So this is where I'm setting my notifications. In this area right here, it's holding from July of 2025. If it loses that area, I would probably convert all the, either Ethereum or Bitcoin, depending, but I wouldn't be bullish on this anymore. If you can lose that area,
Okay.
everything's completely invalidated because you're just only going down at that point.
When you look at the top 20 tokens right now, so we've kind of established ETH is a big play, Bitcoin to a certain extent, depending on the macro elements within it. XRP, would this be a buy for you or a hold right now on XRP? At where it's setting, it's down 7 day, it's about flat, 132.
XRP, I like, Paul. I mean, it could have absolutely bottomed out. It hit a major area here, trying to make a higher low. I mean, that $1.30 is a big place. If you look at this on its, let's compare this to Ethereum. Obviously, that's the thing we're trying to outperform. This actually looks a little bit better. It's in between. I mean, it's trying to make higher lows here. So I think there's a lot of potential here. It does look a little bit better than Solana, I would say, especially against Ethereum. So this area, there's potential. There's definitely potential. I mean, if you're losing this low from, go ahead.
I was going to say, okay, so I like that call. What about hype?
Hype, okay. Hype is interesting. I think it's losing some structure on its USD pair. If you look here on Hype, let me find a chart with more. Yeah, so it's kind of losing a little bit of structure. It's hitting with a kind of a major point, rejecting from it. So I really want to keep an eye on my weekly right here. And if this gets a trigger wave to the bottom, you may be going down a bit more. It's kind of tough because this thing is so new. I would also be looking at this daily. As long as these daily EMAs stay bright, I think there's more potential for forward action, upward price action. Hype versus Bitcoin, that's the thing. It's getting a little bit sketchy on some of these time frames, a little bit more bearish. Money flow starting to come down. I mean, there's not a ton of data on this, but you are seeing some bearish signs that you haven't seen since essentially September of 2025. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see a decent correction against Bitcoin. I would look for a better discount against Bitcoin, at least maybe 30 to 40% against Bitcoin. So,
well, and also down 6.5% just on the weekly. So that in itself, I know it's up a little bit just over the last little bit, but still interesting in terms of those. And I think this is the thing. When you look at crypto right now, there's only a handful of projects I think that really fit in there. There are some out there. Yes, I know many of you guys in the comments will say there's a ton out there where there are some big winners, but they're just at certain levels of risk right now. And I think that's the concern right now. Even if you look at some of the big movers, that have had some play this week, all the way down into, meme coins. So I don't know. We're just very, very conservative right now. I think most people are either on the sidelines right now. When you look at your portfolio, if you're willing to share this, how much percentage-wise are you on the sidelines with right now?
So, I mean, other than, I don't really hold too much cash because there's always a bull market somewhere. I still have half of my XLE position. In terms of crypto, I'm pretty much, all the crypto exposure is mostly Ethereum. A lot of selling cash secured puts on BMNR, but that's, you got to have a tight stop loss on that.
Yeah.
I would say overall, I'm about 30% cash that I'm hoping to put more into Bitcoin and that type of stuff. Obviously Ethereum as the months go on. I think potentially later this year, you may see a lot better entry points on things like Solana, XRP, and some other altcoins, at least on the Bitcoin and Ethereum pairs. So, yeah.
I like it. All right, Evan, Aldo, if you guys want to check out Evan, go over and, of course, visit him on the YouTube page. For him, it's Evan Aldo over on YouTube. And, of course, follow him out there on X. You can catch him right there, at Evan Aldo. And he's making some calls out there, does a good job on technical analysis and some trading as well. So do that. And, Evan, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Always an honor, Paul. Thanks so much for having me.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.